So welcome everyone. If you are new here, this is the Creek Citizen Advisory Committee. It's a regular meeting. We're here on Thursday, May 21st. And Stephanie, would you, oh no, wait, we need to call the meeting to order. The meeting is now called to order. Would you please do roll call for us? Thanks.
Of course. Committee member Chris Klein.
Present.
Committee member Ann Burdett. Committee member Lori Gaskin. Committee member Lee Heller.
Present.
Committee member Stephanie Moray.
Present.
Committee member Todd Rulon Miller. And Chair Penny Owens.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item of business is the approval of the minutes from the March 19th, 2025 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Do we need an all in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. Any agenda adjustments, Stephanie or Aaron?
No adjustments.
Excellent. And now is a public comment opportunity for folks who would like to speak for up to 2 minutes on any subject that is not on the agenda already. Are there any folks in the room? Any folks online who would care to give a comment at this time? Do we have anyone online?
I have no attendees online.
All right, moving on. Erin, we're on to committee member and staff communications.
Thank you, Chair Owens. I do have two staff updates to share with the committee. I have Lori Vandy Werfhorst here, who recently took over our water quality analyst position in the Creeks Division. She comes to us with a lot of past experience directly related to the work that we are doing in the Creeks Division. She was a researcher at UCSB, actually intimately involved in even some of the research projects that we were doing in partnership with UCSB. So she's been here, this is her 5th week, and she's just jumped right in, and super excited to have Lori here. So just wanted to share that update with you. We also have made an offer and backfilled our other project planner position. Evan Hobson will be joining us June 16th. So we're really excited to get back to being fully staffed in the Creeks Division. I also have one other short update. This last Sunday, Jill hosted our Urban Creek Trail Walk, and it was really well attended. It was a really wonderful walk. Highly encourage people to check out our Urban Creek Trails. More of those to come in the future, and more like hosted docent walks as well. And yeah, any of you, encourage you to attend in the future as well.
Awesome. Thanks for all those updates. Great to hear you are able to filling those positions. Great to meet you and welcome. I look forward to it. I'm sure we'll hear from you at a future Creeks meeting. And I'm going to offer any comments from our fellow committee members here today, or
Just welcome. We're glad to have you.
I share that sentiment. Thank you for
Welcome.
joining us.
and great to hear that that Sunday event went really well. I was really excited to see the Urban Creeks Trail continuing to be used as an opportunity to get folks out in the community and enjoy and celebrate our creeks. Excellent. Thanks, Erin. All right. Moving on to item number 7, business items. Up first, we have the Southern California Stormwater Monitoring Coalition update. Thank you, Dr. Murray.
Thank you. Okay, I have mentioned the fact that that the City of Santa Barbara joined the Southern California Stormwater Monitoring Coalition, and we went to the City Council. They passed a resolution so we could enter an agreement, and so now we are fully functioning members. We are going to contribute funds for the first time this coming year when the budget's approved. But I wanted to give you a little bit more detail about what the Stormwater Monitoring Coalition is, and so I requested that Gerhard Hubner, who is the executive director of the committee, he'll give an overview presentation via Zoom. So Gerhard, it's great because he's been the executive director of the, I'm going to say SMC from here forward, since 2020, but he lives in Ventura. He has a lot of background on the Central Coast. He's a professional geologist. He worked for the LA Regional Board, the Central Coast Regional Board, the County of Ventura Watershed Protection District, South San Luis Obispo County Sanitation District, so his experience is really broad, and then also some nonprofits such as the Ventura County Land Trust. And so he will give an overview, but he's not going to talk about the budget part. So I just want to reiterate what's in that staff report is that we are spending $37,000 this coming year, but that will go towards $1 million worth of research. And it's the kind of projects that we just can't do on our own. And with that, I will turn it over to Gerhard, who I hope is right here.
I am. Thank you, Jill. If you could bring up the presentation. And thank you, committee members for having me today. Again, I'm Gerhard Huebner, Executive Director, and I'm going to give you a broad overview of the Southern California Monitoring Coalition, or the SMC, and talk about a few of our programs, two of our projects, forward-looking, look at some of the research projects we are undertake. So who's the SMC? Actually, I wondered that a little bit even when I became executive director. We are 18 permittees and regulators that we collaborate on regional research monitoring initiative. We work toward shared beneficial goals. We adopted a mission statement in 2022. And as you can see on the right hand, to solve stormwater management challenges across Southern California by building regional census around best-in-class tools, methods, and monitoring strategies. Just big overview slide. You can see our most recent members were the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board and the City of Santa Barbara. So we've been in operation since 2000, and we continue to grow. Next slide, please. A little bit of highlights. So Jill mentioned, what you're getting, but we are proud to show that actually I think that number is a little low. 90% through our 5-year research portfolio. We're actually embarking on the next one. I'm going to talk about the Regional BMP Monitoring Network. It's operational now. I'm also going to talk about this health risk related to the HF183. That's a genetic marker. We did update our master agreement in 2000 or last year, and that's where we added the Central Coast and the City of Santa Barbara. We're proud of our partnerships. We have over 47 external organizations in partnership on our research and monitoring, so we don't just do this alone, and our success is dependent on these partnerships and engagement. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about our first, I'll just call our program, first program, our Stream Monitoring Coalition Regional Stream Survey. Slide. It is one of the more comprehensive stream assessment programs in the nation. 18 participating agencies, sample up to 90 sites per year. We do a number of analytes and stream health indicators, including physical, chemical, and biological analysis and sample collection. And it's a unique link to the statewide and national programs, similar type programs. Next slide. So this slide, as you can see, these are all the sampling sites, or potentially sampling sites over time. As Jill mentioned, I was Deputy Director of Public Works in Ventura County, and so in Ventura County, I know at least that we were involved with the program since 2005, perhaps even earlier. Good news is 25% of the Southern California's torrential streams are healthy, but there are some gaps that are still to be evaluated, and there's some undeveloped lands that are in pretty good shape. Next slide. All right, and so you get all this data. What does it mean? Well, it does inform some of the regulators and work that's going on at a statewide level. One in particular is channel modification. As you can imagine, anytime you channelize a stream, the biology suffers. So there are some new biointegrity policies that may be developed. They're going to be pretty difficult to understand. But the good news is we are looking into that, and some of these studies will inform perhaps how these policies will be implemented. Next slide, please. All right, and this is a picture of in Ventura County, Arroyo Calabasas. You may be aware of it, but it's a stream restoration project, previously been modified. So one of the impacts, or one of the things we're looking at with one of our future studies, is what's the potential to restore some of these channels, and how successful can that be? And then looking at baseline conditions, and then over time, looking how the restoration has been either successful or needs improvement. Next slide. So this is the other program that I want to highlight and talk about a bit. This was established in about a year and a half ago. It's our regional BMP monitoring network. Next slide, please. So one of the big reasons for implementing this BMP monitoring network is there's a fortune being spent in Southern California using what's called structural BMPs, or I'll just call hard best management practices or treatment, stormwater treatment, for managing stormwater runoff and pollution. LA County has a measure that have money to spend on these kind of things, and you can just see the type of money or funds that are being spent, as much as $280 million per year, at least in LA County. These are being driven by stormwater permits, the MS4 permits, but more specifically on some of the total maximum daily loads, or TDLs, where they have a specific driver and they need to meet their target by a specific deadline. UN redevelopment projects are also one of the drivers. So next slide. So one of the research questions are, you're spending all this money, do they work? Do they reduce the discharge of contaminants? And after you build them, how much money, or how do you maintain with functions and by the performance that you need? Next slide. One of the ways we do it is, and we have a specific study in some of the media, the engineered media or others, and in particular this case is the flow bypass. Goes through the media and then outflow, and hopefully has reduced the contaminants to a acceptable degree. Next slide. And as I mentioned, you have how can you maintain? So whether it's a trash collector, whether it's a dry well, so it's clogged, no longer infiltrates. And I'll give you an example in Ventura County. We installed a parking lot where it's concrete porous pavement, and over time, those pore spaces potentially can clog if not used and rehabilitate the permeous pavement. So that's one of the things that this program is looking at. What is the performance throughout Southern California of these BMP? Next slide. All right, let's look at one of our specific projects that was recently finished. This is linking HF183, that's the genetic marker, human health risk in Southern California stormwater. Next slide. All right, well, I don't think I have to tell folks that are involved in the water industry or in the stormwater industry that fecal indicated bacteria is a challenging wet weather. Has a huge price tag if you're looking to specifically try to treat and deal with this type of bacteria throughout your watershed. It's above thresholds almost everywhere. Our biggest issues. Many of these water bodies have HF183, the specific marker. So looking that you can address these hotspots, or where human influence is contributing pollutants to stormwater, you definitely want to have a tool like HF183 to help you. And there's a lot of interest in using HF183 as a management prioritization mechanism. Again, so you can use your resources, target the specific pollutant sources. Just for example, looking across Southern California, when we did the sampling in the study, HF183, some of the detections, and then if you look at the pathogens, one of them is the most concerned, not norovirus, kind of seeing a good correlation between. Next slide. And so, even if you have this tool, this HF183 tool, and developed as a risk-based in stormwater, want to know how much is too much. For example, typically fecal indicated bacteria, they were huge impacted beef. So indicator there was not necessarily directly correlated with stormwater. Next slide. And so within our study, we used QMRA. It's a health risk model. It's accepted in the industry, developed by EPA. Does need 3 inputs to estimate illness risk, pathogens, exposure, and a dose response. And you combine those two, and you do some analysis and the modeling, and it will give you a threshold value, which we developed. Next slide. And I want to mention before we leave that, the things we'll be looking at is, as we've come up with this threshold, what are some of the management implications? How do you apply that threshold to management decisions? All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the advances in microplastic measurements and toxicity. And I want to acknowledge the city of Santa Barbara for their contribution to some of this work. Next slide, please. All right, and as you know, in microplastics, there are different sizes, diverse characteristics. They're throughout the environment, found in water, sediment, and the atmosphere, and their potential impact to human and environmental health. Next slide. But we need to know what's the best way to collect them, what's the best measurement measures, and if the data is good quality or not, and how much is too much. And so I want to do a shout out to SPIRT, one of our member agencies, and does much of the work. They've done some significant work accepted by the state, primarily in drinking water, but many of it has applicability for water. Next slide. And then we've applied it to our, I'll just call it a non-structural EMP project or street sweeping project. We had a pilot project in the city of Long Beach, also recently completed, where the goal was to measure the runoff quality between swept and unswept pavement. And as you can see, the different control and uncontrolled measurements we use. Next slide. And you may have seen this picture before, but this is the synthetic rainfall generator that was used in the project, developed specifically to help assist us with doing this project and completing the study. Next slide. All right. I'd like to turn maybe now a little bit forward looking. Back in September of last year, we convened a research agenda, an expert panel, experts from throughout the country, as you can see, several local experts. We had a regulator and a discharger or permittee also participate, and we had someone from the California Coast Alliance. Next slide. And for 3 days, brainstormed 59 project areas. Everyone has some really great ideas, but you have to refine it and get it down to 36, and ultimately to 20 project, I'll just say concepts or work scopes. We discussed it at our steering committee meeting in December, and in January we met and decided which we were going to fund. So pretty tough process. Everybody wants, there's only so much money, obviously, to fund projects, and so they ranked the top 4 and decided at least forward with 3. So I'm going to briefly discuss those in the next slide. So this was number 1, project 1.1 was the number 1 project. Was a bit controversial. It was an outcome of the investigative order that was done in the San Diego County, which was looking at the contributions from sewer collection systems and potentially discharging to storm drains. So there was interest in that. There was 4 phases. Has not been funded yet. There is a lot of discussion going on with the wastewater community, their involvement and contribution, and probably will lead to some type of workshop this summer. The next one is project 1.2. This was an outcome of the HF 183 project that I just discussed, and looking to take the threshold to the next step. Is what do you do with this tool? Does it become an objective, which seems to be some reluctance, and the threshold, and how do you apply it as a tool in stormwater management? third one, project 2.1. This is an outcome of the channelization study that we did. So multi-year project, it's as many as 5 years, looking at where the opportunities to restore and enhance the biology in some of the modified streams and kind of develop a success or guidance in terms of how to do that. Project 4.2 is an outcome of the street sweeping discussed, and now taking that pilot project, going out to different places in the community in Southern California, looking at different road base, different vehicles, looking at traffic patterns, perhaps even looking at street sweeping equipment, and how does that all factor into its ability to pull up pollutants and material and debris and provide a benefit road for water quality. A couple others, as you can imagine, I mentioned all those potential projects, a few others that have not been funded yet, but there was interest on individual entities in the SMC, and the one was looking at e-reporting, and that was another project we looked at, is how to streamline the annual reports to make them more user-friendly to both the public as well as the regulators, as there's a considerable amount of money in this reporting function. And another project was to look at our routine monitoring program and see if there's some efficiencies and promote it. So those two have not been funding, but there is ongoing discussion. Last slide. So I want to end presentation today and just, you have an annual report. In fact, we're working on our next version, but this is the most recent one that was adopted last October. In it, there's a progress report. We talked about our portfolio. At least in the last one, we talked about the 5-year research agenda, many of the projects I talked about earlier, and then the planning for the next year. I want to also mention we have a website. I encourage you to go up and take a look at some of our publications, past work, other things. That, I thank you again for having me here. I'm happy to answer you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gerhard. And at this time, we'd like to take any questions or comments from the committee.
Committee Member Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for this presentation. It's really helpful to learn about this program more generally. Our purview is Santa Barbara, and I'm wondering if there's anything specific that we are contributing to or participating in that you could touch on briefly. I know we've been doing street sweeping for a while, and maybe we're going to be a participant in that study, but is there anything else where what you're doing particularly affects our oversight of Santa Barbara?
Oh, I think, and I'll let Jill, of course, she's much more familiar with your program than I am. I think many of the programs will contribute, or there's some overlap. So I mentioned the regional stream monitoring. I understand you do your own, but there's some definitely things that can be learned and shared by both experiences. BMP monitoring network, it could expand up to Santa Barbara. In fact, many of our studies in science, there's no reason why we can't pick sampling sites in the city of Santa Barbara. It just hasn't happened yet. Street sweeping, I mentioned that the city contributed for the microplastics. It was huge, and we didn't have that analytical, and now that data set is valuable and available to others. So I think there's incredible opportunity to move up into the Central Coast, whether it's just the city of Santa Barbara or perhaps further up the coast. As I mentioned, we have the Central Coast Regional Board as one of our members.
Yeah, thank you, Gerhard. Let's see. Can I put a slide back up? Is that possible? Can you go back to the one with the open channel? So I think that we will probably end up collecting samples in Santa Barbara that contribute to these larger data pools. I don't know exactly what those are yet because we're new and because we're at the start of this 5-year project. So, for example, we were requested whether we could add a BMP this past winter, but we had our storm monitoring already set, and we just didn't have the staff time to help with the sampling. But I love this slide because this is a question for us. If you can take out the bottom of a concrete channel, we've looked into that in the past. Unfortunately, the modeling of the flood elevations are not in our favor, but we don't even know what we could say. Like, we know there's going to be some biological improvement, but we don't have any numbers on that. And this slide shows two things. One, that the average, it's a biointegrity score. The average biointegrity score would go up. It also shows the amount of immense variability site to site. And so to me, it shows that we've tried to study some of these questions, for example, the effect of some of our bioswales, and we're collecting concentration data where the concentrations vary, orders of magnitude over one storm. We're a small staff, and we just haven't been able to get a handle on the effectiveness of those. Whereas if we can pool our data into plots like this, we'll start saying, even though we don't see the improvement in our 20 sample points, when we can compare that to, I don't know how many, 50 sites and 20 sample points, then we can start seeing some improvements.
Yeah. Any other committee members have questions? No? Thank you, Gerhard. That was a really great presentation, and I'm really excited to have the City Creeks Division join in supporting and be part of and benefit from this collaborative research and all the important work you guys are doing. Thank you.
You're welcome, and I'm excited to have the city as one of our partners.
Great.
And the whole creek program.
Thank you, Gerhard. I'll see you in a couple months, I think.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Oh, public comment. All right, seeing no public comment, and this item was for discussion, so there's no need for a vote. We can move on to the next item of business, B, which is the recommended fiscal year 2026-2027 budget. Hand it over to Creeks Manager Erin Markey. Thanks, Erin.
All right, thank you, Chair Owen. So to start off, I will share that the Budget Subcommittee met last month, and we reviewed the budget in full detail as we do annually. And today we are coming to give the update to the full committee. I know some of you were there for the Budget Subcommittee meeting, so this will be a little bit of re-review. So just how the budget development process works here at the city. Every year, we kind of look at past year spending and make some projections for the future year as far as what's anticipated, and we come up with what we call our base budget. The department then looks at that. So finance gives that to us, and then the department itself looks at that, kind of makes adjustments based on their knowledge of what the needs are going to be in the next 2-year budget cycle. And then we internally review that with our finance department as well as the city administrator's office, all before the even draft budget is released. So we're currently now, the draft budget was released on April 22nd. The budget subcommittee met at the end of April to review in full detail the Creeks 2-year budget proposal. The enterprise fund, which the Creeks Division Fund is part of, had its first review at City Council on May 6th. And then today we're reviewing it with the full Creeks Advisory Committee. And then recommending adoption on to council. So just a reminder, I think most of us know this, but the Creeks Division is funded through a voter-approved initiative, what we call Measure B, which increased the transient occupancy tax in Santa Barbara by 2%, and that additional 2% goes into a special fund to pay for stormwater and surface water quality improvement projects, as well as creek restoration efforts. And so the Creeks Division does not receive general fund funding, so we're what's considered an enterprise fund. And the proposed budget this year is consistent with the Measure B funding guidelines, which were last reaffirmed by the committee in January of 2010. And then this is semi-new. This started last year, but just wanted to highlight it again that now the city has this OpenGov platform, kind of a budget landing page where you can really dig into the details of the city's proposed budget. If anybody's interested, highly recommend you check it out. Let's see, so this is just kind of an overview of our proposed budget for the next 2 years. So we're currently in the 2-year budget cycle. If you remember last year, we were just looking at the 2020-25 as the end of the 2-year budget cycle, but this year we're moving forward looking at our next 2-year budget, so fiscal year 2026 and 2027. we talked about this a bit at the budget subcommittee. Our revenues based on the transient occupancy tax are expected to still increase over the next couple of years. Maybe a little optimistic, but time will tell. But it's not a large increase as far as what's been projected by our finance department. We have some increases. I'll point out kind of the larger shifts, or what stands out to me in the salaries and benefits line items. And that is because of staff vacancies that will expected to be filled, as well as increases in staff wages and benefits. We also have the supplies and services, which is basically all of our operating costs. You can see kind of a large increase there, partly because the street sweeping program, which Creeks Division took over in 2025, was added in mid-year, so it wasn't truly reflected in the previously projected budget. We also have increases in our rental space, the office that we rent in our sustainability department. We are taking over additional office space next door as we are adding more staff and growing, and so there's increased costs there in the next couple of fiscal years. Our creek cleanup contract is expected to increase about $20,000 next year. The Andrea Clark Bird Refuge maintenance account, so that project, when we bid it out for construction, we included 2 years of annual maintenance within the installer's contract, and so that contract is we're already 2 years post-project come July, so then we're adding more funds into our general operating budget to maintain that project site going into the future. And then the Arroyoboro Estuary Maintenance Account, we've also added some additional funds there. That project site is one of our oldest, and we're looking at going in and kind of redoing some of the understory planting where we've had some dieback, so a little bit of an increase there is expected in 2026. Yeah, and then our capital, I wanted to point out, we did discuss this at the budget subcommittee a little bit, but our capital improvement program budget has shifted a little bit from what was reviewed back in October when we met and discussed our CAP. Typically, the Creeks Division in the past had kind of allocated those costs. Let me just go to the next slide, actually. Kind of as like savings accounts for each of our expected projects so that we could save up funding to basically construct a project in the future. And just based on city policy and direction from the city administrator's office, they'd much more prefer that we really budget what we're going to spend in a year, even though that creates more volatility and variability from year to year. So based on that guidance, we've really updated our CIP to try to reflect that as best we can. So there will be, some years where there's not going to be a big allocation to our capital improvement program based on where we are with certain projects, and then other years where there may be. So just another reason, as I'll get to, that I would like to recommend that we increase our reserve balance to better be able to plan for that. Let's see. Yeah, so on to reserves. So the policy has been for years that the reserve target be set at $3 million, and the goal of that is to, well, originally the goal of that was to kind of meet the cost of 2 large construction or 2 large capital improvement projects. A, with rising costs of construction, and B, the changes to how we're budgeting for our capital improvement program. I'm recommending that we consider increasing that reserve target to $4 million moving forward. The fiscal year 2026 budget does include $300,000 from reserves going into the CIP program, and the FY 27, based on hopeful project implementation that we hope to pick up here soon, has another $1.5 million going from reserves. Yeah, so that concludes the presentation. I'm happy to chat through any questions people might have, but there is a recommendation here today that the committee pass on. I also highlighted that the subcommittee supports the proposed 2026-27 budget, but the recommendation, sorry, this should actually say for the, not the budget subcommittee, but for the CAC. Oh, sorry, there it is. That you recommend approval on for the Creek's fiscal year 2026-27 budget to City Council for approval.
Thank you, Erin, very much for that thorough presentation. I'd like to first open this up to the committee for any questions.
May I?
Member Chris?
Thank you. My question relates to the staff recommendation to increase the reserve target to 4 million. Is that, if that were adopted by this body, is it technically a part of this 2-year budget, or is it just more a strategic decision of staff's recommendation, and it would become a strategic initiative, if you will, of this committee?
Yes, it's just more of a strategic, yes, thanks, Committee Member Klein. We don't even have that in our funding guidelines outlined, what the reserve target should be. That's just been the target for many, many years. Internally, I guess, you know, the goal of that staff are trying to reach. And so, yes, it's just a kind of, we as staff want your consideration of that as well, being the oversight committee for our funding.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? Committee Member Heller?
I think you want to take public comment.
Well, questions from you first and then public comment. Okay. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, we need to first see if there were any questions from the public. Did anybody join us online? Nope. All right. And then,
I'll move the staff recommendation.
oh, excellent.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Sorry,
Aye.
question.
Oh.
I heard a move for a staff recommendation, so is the motion more specific than that? I just want to be sure that we've got the verbiage correct.
The formal recommendation from the committee is to recommend on approval of this 2-year budget. I just wanted to make the committee aware that staff is hoping in the future to make our reserve target 4 million. Yeah.
Understood. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just thought it might be more specific if we read this specific recommendation here. rather
Sorry,
than
I'm just imitating what
recommendation.
city council does, and they usually just
forgive
say,
me.
move it. I'm happy to move that the committee recommend approval of the proposed Creeks Division fiscal year 2026-2027 budgets to the city council.
I'll second that.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Any opposition or abstain?
Excellent.
None.
Thank you.
Motion carries 4-0. Thanks. Well, I believe that brings us to wraps up our final item. So it is now 6:08, and I would like to officially call this meeting to a close. Thanks, everyone.